Hello, my name is George today, and I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm here to read this book, the Daily Reflections book, for the February 8th, 17th, 2026. It's called The Love in Their Eyes. Some of us won't believe in God, others can't, and still others who do believe that God exists have no faith whatever He will perform this miracle. That's from the 12 Steps and 12 Traditions book, found on page 25. It was the changes I saw in the new people who came into the fellowship that helped me lose my fear and change my negative attitude to a positive one. I could see the love in their eyes, and I was impressed by how much their one day at a time sobriety meant to them. They had looked squarely at step 2 and came to believe that a power greater than themselves was restoring them to sanity. That gave me faith in the fellowship and hope that it could work for me too. I found that God was a loving God and not that punishing God I feared before coming to AA. I also found that He had been with me during all those times I had been in trouble before I came to AA. I knew today that He was the one who led me to AA and that I am a miracle. Period. The end of the reading. Let's see. I'll just start with something that may seem, well, somewhat related, but many times, or even still today, I've been curious in my life how this came to be that I wanted to get sober, I guess. I mean, that I really wanted to get sober, that I was willing to do a lot of things that I had never considered before to get sober and even to remain sober. And this line right here, He was the one who led me to AA, speaking of God or this power greater than this person, the writer's self. Some force, let's say, led him to AA or her. I don't know. So myself, I've been curious about that I've been in, or had been, let's say, in some pretty, let's see, let me put it this way. I was in such bad shape at the end of my drinking career, let's say that I knew I was going to die from alcoholism. Let's put it that way. And then something happened. And what is the something that happened? And I've been thinking about this for many years now. Not the only thing I think about by all means. Just every once in a while, when I'm talking about things like this, somewhat related to this change, here, maybe it can be revealed in today's reading. And if I'd been doing the past couple of days' readings and doing these video chats like this, maybe I would have a better answer. But since I hadn't done those readings or whatever, I've done them in the past, of course. Here's the answer, I guess, or the answer I've been using that I believe is true, is that at the end of my drinking career, I was in such rough shape that the desperation to live, that's the thing, that to live, where did that urge, desire, need, want come from? To live. and I thought it was desperation, and then something a lot more, I don't know, cerebral. It wasn't spiritual. It's probably the key point here, is that I didn't have some complete awareness of some kind of spiritual deficit in my life. And if I could get that straightened out, everything would get much better. I did not have that while I was drinking. I don't recall, like well, maybe it's just hard to pin this one down for a couple of different reasons. It was like 20 plus and way more than 20 plus years ago that maybe one of these instances occurred, where in the height of a drunken mistake, let's say, that I would pray to God or something to get me out of the situation. I don't recall that. I mean, I've been to a lot of AA meetings, and I've heard a lot of people from AA. I know a lot of people from AA. I know just a lot of people also that a lot of the times they say, just like in today's reading, that this person, the writer of today's thing here for February 17th, it looks like this last long run-on sentence paragraph here. I found that God was a loving God, not that punishing God I feared before coming to AA. Oh, there's a period. I also found that he had been with me during all those times I had been in trouble before coming to AA. So myself, when I had been in trouble, I don't recall crying out to some spiritual source for rescue. And why am I bringing this up? Because of what it goes on to say. I know today that he was the one that led me to AA. Speaking of a spiritual source or God or Allah or even the devil or whatever this person believed as a higher power, led me to AA. Doesn't say how he was led to AA, with heel marks behind him being dragged. It didn't mention. I didn't get that flavor from the reading anyways. What I'm trying to get at here, I think, is that this is the second month and we're talking about second step stuff from Alcoholics Anonymous, which reads like this from the 12 steps of, I got a bad injury going on up here in my shoulder. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Period. The end of the second step. I didn't even understand that at that time. I read it, so not involved. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Go back to today's reading, and then my question again from my personal experience. February 17th, I think. The Love in Their Eyes is the title. I found that God was a loving God, that not the punishing God that he had known before or she had known. Also found he had been with me during all those times I had been in trouble. And that source, power greater than, was the thing leading this person to Alcoholics Anonymous. There. Okay, so myself, I've pondered this thought for whatever reason in the past, and in the past. What led me to Alcoholics Anonymous? without the heel marks, without being dragged and forced into Alcoholics Anonymous. Because I had that experience several times before willingly accepting I needed something that probably Alcoholics Anonymous could provide, just in this big, non-specific way. Because I hadn't tried Alcoholics Anonymous with any level of sincerity. So this is why I say when I was in trouble and near death from alcoholism, I didn't have like the spiritual experience or this other, I forget if it said it in today's reading. Anyhow, like a lot of people will cry out to the God that they've always been praying to for rescue from some thing they think might happen or something that is currently happening. It's like, God, please make it stop. Something along those lines. Now, my own experience, like I've been so drunk and throwing up and feeling so bad that I may have made some kind of half-hearted promise, and this is why I say may, because it's like 20, 30 years ago at least that everything would have aligned to make this circumstance even possible to be this drunk that I'm throwing up and in such bad shape that I would cry out to some spiritual thing for help. And I'm sure I've done it. I just can't pinpoint it, I guess. And, time after time, it didn't work. And then I'd find myself in that same situation again. Really all of my own doing. It's not like God put the bottle in my hand and said, drink 40 shots of whiskey. That was me. George, I think, if that's who I called myself today. So then whatever. I think I thought I could handle it, I guess. And then eventually I was so beat down by that situation alone that I'm like, I'm going to die if I keep drinking. I don't think I want to die. I did get suicidal. I never attempted killing myself. I had the suicidal ideations, though, of it's like, how would I do it or whatever, and I don't want to get into that. It's like I was in a really, really dark, bad, ugly space. I don't know if it was bad. Because I've been through so many years of therapy that classifying things good and bad I don't know. In some cases, it's just simple and a good, an effective way of painting a picture. A less than favorable circumstance is like bad, okay, or whatever. They're just a word salad, man. It's a different thing. I guess what I learned in therapy is that everything doesn't fit into its own little category that you can easily put a label on. And then if you just were able to fix the title of that label, like, oh, this is bad. Well, then just fix it somehow. It's like, wow, it wasn't bad. It was something else or whatever. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a sober, recovering alcoholic with a lot of contentment and a lot of gratitude, I think. So, found out that a power greater than myself is the force that led me to Alcoholics Anonymous. To keep this in the context of, I guess, the title that I've been trying here, or it's called A/B testing within YouTube. And I don't know what I'm doing with YouTube. So I'm trying this testing with this different title. Anyhow, it wasn't just desperation, okay? Remember, let's give you some idea of what I'm trying to get at. Also, I've been sober almost 20 years now, I think. Definitely been sober 18 years, 19 years, not 20 years yet. Last year I was thinking, anyways. Willingly sober. Let's put it that way. I wasn't forced into going to Alcoholics Anonymous to try and get my life back together. I went because I thought maybe it could provide a way for me to put my life back together, and I didn't need anybody pushing me there 20 some years ago, 18 years ago, whatever. Let's just call it 20 years. 20 years ago, I did take the advice of a treatment counselor, an alcohol abuse, substance abuse counselor, American Psychiatric Association licensed fellow that had a lot to do with psychology and psychiatry. I think he might have been, well, I know in this iteration of his career, he was way more on the psychological side of things and not the psychiatrical side. At his, not hardly, we'll call it prompting here, part of his advice for me when I left the treatment facility was, you should probably really look at, he was highly recommending further aftercare. I'll just keep it simple right here. And so I heeded that advice. I took that advice. I processed that advice, and the logical part of my mind that I think was still working said, yes, that's probably a very good idea. At any rate, I'll at least sign up for it and go to one meeting or whatever it is and find out more about it before I just say I'm fine, I don't need it, like I had done before, with this same person being my counselor, one of many counselors. Okay, so why did I bring that up? Oh, I started to unravel the mess in my head, or I was able to picture, or maybe more accurately become aware of the mess in my head, that tangled up, let's call them lies, and held together with fear. That's another thing too. Just making a mess up inside my head. And of course that's like a trigger to relapse back into alcoholism, because that's how I was trying to deal with that problem previously for many, many, many years. Mess in the head, alcohol to numb it out, and then, maybe the physical sickness, definitely the mental sickness, and the numbing would go away, and then I would need to re-administer a drunkening to quell the voices and maybe get some peace and quiet happening. And I can't lie, because that did work. In the scope of things, it worked about this much for like this long. There's not even, it worked for this long, for this much. Now, being sober, looking at the tangles that still arise, or the difficulties in my mind, the thought process, and the things that irk me, the psychotherapy and things, it's like the sobriety's been working this much, and then, like, if you compared this, the alcohol was working this much. There's a gap there, but not very big. The sobriety thing and effectively coping with stuff is working well over at least this much. And it's been working for almost now as long as I was drinking. Getting close. Not quite there yet. Anyhow, this thing, something led me to Alcoholics Anonymous willingly, and then with that willingness in place while still attending Alcoholics, even like tomorrow I'm going, there's a sincerity involved inside here that hadn't been there 20 plus years ago. That my sincerity these days has replaced compliance, I think, in the older days. The only reason you could find me at an AA meeting was to provide proof I had attended that's not how I want to say it. That's in effect what it did, though. To satisfy is the word that some other outside authority figure had placed upon me. You must comply and do this. And so I did it with that same non-level of sincerity. So that's really not how Alcoholics Anonymous works. These steps, if you're trying to do step 2, say, let's make this more germane. If you came to, if you came to believe a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity, there's kind of a lot involved there. Number one, maybe, is you need to figure that you have some level of insanity going on in, I don't know, your thought process, resulting in insane behavior, maybe. And then you need to come to believe that that can be fixed, number one. And then that there's actually something you can contact or somehow communicate with that can actually remove the insanity that maybe you don't fully believe is even there, can remove that insanity. And you need to come to that belief. So there could be just decades of other opposing thoughts in your mind about, like I said, a way to contact or communicate with the power outside yourself or greater than yourself. This stuff's just sounded crazy to me on its own, because I kind of liked the scientific method and still do, very much so. However, I've allowed maybe did you know that maybe we, in the scientific community at large, I can't prove this, so it isn't very scientific, but you might be able to find some kind of stats or evidence to convince yourself that we fully, within the scientific community, we thought we knew the standard model, and we don't really. We've got a pretty good grip, but we keep discovering new elements and different things, and it just keeps getting stacked on, and which is good, because then it brings us to some area where we need to question what just happened yesterday and why did it change, if it, or whatever. Okay, and so anyways, the standard model, I guess, as far as like in quantum physics, the different things making up reality, like on two different scales, or many different scales, but more handily, I like to think of it this way. The human scale is like 6 foot tall, and gradients of that kind of thing, like, you know, a 6 foot tall person doesn't live in a 2 foot tall building generally. It's a 6 foot tall building at least. Usually it's 8 feet. Uh, a lot of people live in like a single story house or a 2-story house, or they live in a collection of many 8 foot tall boxes in an apartment building type of thing. And then that apartment building is usually subject to some kind of building code and all this kind of crap like that. That's only 4 to 6 stories tall, depending where and all this. And then where you can build skyscrapers still, and even skyscrapers. What's the tallest one? 1,000 feet. And that's kind of cheating, measuring the antenna on top and things or whatever. But my point is that 1,000 feet is still only a, what? It's not a half a mile. Half a mile is 2,500 feet plus. Human scale, 6 foot tall, 1,000 foot building. The planet's only 25,000 miles in diameter, give or take, because up a mountain, you know, that kind of thing. And mountains, they're 20, 30,000? Never. I don't think there's a 30,000 foot tall mountain. I think, what is it, Everest? It's like 22,000 feet. Now, so my point here, the standard model of, let's call them particle physics, we keep turning up new stuff or or making discoveries, finding flaws, adding more particles and such. So the scientific method, I like that. It's very clear in a way and immutable maybe. Now this thing, you start throwing power greater than yourself in there, it just gets rejected in my mind, or used to. This is what I'm trying to say here, is that like the addition of like only in a very sloppy way, I've allowed in my belief system for previously undefined things that have very strong, compelling evidence to be true. So I came to believe, maybe in that philosophy right there, is that, well, maybe we don't know everything, and a lot of stuff I've heard isn't quite right. Maybe I could just tweak it a little bit, because the other way I'd been doing things was a failure for the most part, and I was going to die, and so there's a constraint of lifespan. Again, human scale, 300 years tops, man, as far as I could tell. I don't think a person's lived over 150 years old in a very long time. Somebody living over 100 years old still is somewhat rare when you consider there's 8 billion people on this 25,000 mile diameter planet. 8 billion people, give or take, 6 billion people, whatever. It's just such a huge number of people rarely make it to 100 years old. Okay, so let's call human life 100 years old, just to be generous. 6 foot tall, 25,000 mile diameter, 100 year span in time. What are you going to do? Those are 3 constraints that really keep us in this world of the human scale thing. Is on the atomic scale of things. I guess that can still be atomic scaled, but the subatomic scale of things is what I'm talking about. And that's kind of why I brought this standard model in here, is that we keep making more discoveries, or at least as far as I know, we keep making more discoveries that throw a bunch of question marks in, which is always good, I think. Because, I mean, if you never had any questions, that'd be it and done, and then things might happen. But you would just say, oh, well, that's the way it is. That's boring, man. I don't think that's even correct. And I can't tell you why. At least not right now, and it's out of the scope of things. What I'm getting at is that how or why and whatever a power greater than yourself could be. Because of this thing came to believe, it's like, well, I had a belief system, now I need to change it, like the standard model, or add it, and so I need to do some experiments. I need a hypothesis, I need a reason, a motive of why I might want to go through this expenditure of energy to discover something new, because it might be grueling and uncomfortable. To check all those boxes for me when I applied sincerity to step 2 and Alcoholics Anonymous in general, these 12 steps. Let's see, I was drinking when I was in my 20s, that's for sure. When I was in my teens, just 10 years, a decade earlier, one of 10 decades, 100-year lifespan, roughly, I discounted spiritual stuff. Didn't have room for that, or time, or something, or interest, really, I think. Anyhow. Second decade out of 10, possible, 8 more to go, maybe, if you're lucky, 100 years old. Heavy alcoholism in the 20s, 30s, and into the 40s. Still unwilling to accept into the belief system this, to me at the time, a non-scientific entity power that could save me. That has changed. I've discovered things here. Let's bring this back to today's reading. The love in their eyes. Some of us won't believe in God. Others can't. Yeah, I wouldn't believe in God. Others can't believe in God. I don't know how that maybe just ignorance. And still others who do believe that God exists have no faith whatever he will perform this miracle, which I don't know exactly, but you can find that on page 25, what that miracle is in the 12 Steps, 12 Traditions book, which maybe I'll review that. It was and I don't like this grammar, spelling and stuff, but the judgment needs to, because it isn't helpful or productive. It was the changes I saw in the new people who came into the fellowship that helped me lose my fear and change my negative attitude to a positive one. You know, that's happened to me, and it put a pin in that one too. I could see the love in their eyes, and I was impressed by how much their one day at a time sobriety meant to them. They had looked squarely at step 2, that one I've just been belly aching about, and came to believe that a power greater than themselves was restoring them to sanity. That gave me faith in the fellowship and hope that it could work for me too. It's exactly what happened to me also. And then a discovery was made. I found that God was a loving God, not that punishing God I feared before coming to AA. That was probably an artifact of the fear of the unknown phenomena. I need to look this up again. Is that a singular event or thing, circumstance, situation like that, whatever I just said? A phenomena or phenomenon? Nom? P-H-E-N, phenom? N-O-M-E-N-O-N? That gave me faith in the fellowship and hope that it could work for me too. I found that God was a loving God, not that punishing God I feared before coming to AA. That would be fear. The fear of the unknown, not having the evidence, being led astray. Ignorance. I was afraid of God, wrongly so. Well, what's the Bible say? The fear of God is in obedience or something. I don't recall. Anyways, it's just I also found that he had been with me during all those times I had been in trouble before I came to AA. I knew today that he was the one that led me to AA, that I am a miracle. And that I am a miracle. So, my standard model did not accommodate any of this. I loosely put together my own hypothesis. Looking at the sample of the people in the meeting, they were much like myself. And in some other ways, let's see, I don't know how to really, they were strikingly different also. Let's say that. So I had a wide variety of the sample to account for coincidental things and like that, results. But I guess the control would be that they all had begun to believe that they were alcoholic in nature or in disease symptomology, whatever, that the things they were doing are also the things an alcoholic would do. So let's give them that. My sample was probably a good sample of an alcoholic. And I was curious still, even with all my evidence, that maybe I wasn't alcoholic or an alcoholic and all this. So rather than being forced and told to go, which I had been in that circumstance earlier and had zero sincerity, this 20 some years ago when I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had a different level of sincerity that I had always attributed to desperation, and there wasn't any spiritualness involved to it. That has changed. I had to make an allowance now because my hypothesis was coming together that, look, here's a group of people much like myself. Some are older, some are taller, some are fatter, some are skinnier, some are healthier, some are not. It's a good spattering sample. And yet they all claim to be alcoholic, let's put it that way. And I just kept coming back to the meetings and stopped drinking because I figured, well, maybe the alcohol is affecting me. So let's stop that so we can rule that out as a troubleshooting measure, and then go to Alcoholics Anonymous and see what happens. And I guess what my hypothesis is that these people seemed to have survived, conquered, completed even, or whatever, that they've had way more successful, and then I need to define successful. They had better results than I had in many of the same circumstances. So I kept coming back to meetings. I wasn't drunk. I stayed sober. I was miserable, angry, and all kinds of different mental things, but I was curious, like in a scientific kind of way and stuff, that, well, let's see, I might be alcoholic, so quit drinking and go to these meetings that people say there's something to be found there. So let's try that. Open mind, right? And then the motivating factor was, after a while, look at these same like people, just any one of them could be me, or it should work for me as it did for them. I liked the results they were getting in the way that they were traveling through life, in the way their philosophy, however they were doing things, seemed to be working better for them than whatever I had been doing. So the results I was obtaining were not satisfactory. And it's like, well, let's incorporate something new into the belief system. Came to believe that a power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. So I picked this sample group of these like people with the same problem, at least, and the same solution purportedly to that problem that could also be helpful to me, because it's like a highly probable it might be some kind of law in a way that I don't even think a real hardcore rigorous scientist would say, like the law of gravity. It's a good handle to put on it, to speak about it in such a way that there's just so many mountains, or so many tall mountains of evidence and foundational stuff involved that for all intents and purposes today in 2026, being a 6 foot tall human, the law of gravity is like, yeah, it's right. If it isn't a law, it's right next to being a law. Any differing kind of argument you can come up against it, that kind of thing, I don't think it's going to topple it over. It's a law. So, likewise, there's a lot of at least anecdotal evidence that doing this came to believe that the power greater than yourself could be these other group of humans that seem to be living their life in a way you would like, and you could be much like them by following these 12 steps laid out in the Alcoholics Anonymous thing. The 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. So that's what I did, like way over 14 years ago. The open mind finally opened up enough to incorporate silly notions I had thought at the time. And even if they are still silly notions, because I can't give you a concrete something that would verify this as a law of a spiritual law, let's say. How do you measure a spiritual law? I don't know. I can't. So this is the thing, like I started out today saying this. I wonder if this is still recording. I hope so. It looks like 43 minutes and 22 seconds. Is that right? Whoopsie. What was that instinct to want to survive? Is that a evolutionary thing? I think so, because I went into this a little bit in a previous talk, that we still have, let's call them artifacts or leftover traits within us just for being human that no longer are helpful in today's more modern world. Let's just say because of one single thing, the effective harnessing of electricity, that wasn't a thing, let's see, 300, 400 years ago. You could, for me, I'm pretty darn sure 400 years ago, no human was aware or was nowhere close to harnessing electricity in any kind of helpful way that might make a problem they were having easier to deal with. Now we've taken that in, say, the past 150 years and electrified almost everything. I mean, so many things. It's a huge percentage. That in a genealogical way or whatever, it screwed our system up with sleeping patterns, rhythms. I can't think of the circadian rhythms. It's like we were very in tune with the sun, and for good reason. If this species wanted to survive or was set up to survive, it needed sustenance, which came in the way of ingesting food through the mouth. This is why there were no two-headed dinosaurs that I know of, and why they had such tiny heads and gigantic bodies, and were forced to. There's what? Put that over here. Humans, 6 foot, 6 foot tall world. Spiritual stuff. What am I talking about? The harnessing of electricity. 150 years ago, we just hit the on switch on everything. And then, light bulbs and stuff. Like I'm saying, everything's electrified. It took us like thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of years and 10,000 more years to just change something in a subtle, helpful way in the species of being human that might be advantageous in us in how to get a meal or catch a meal or cook a meal or to get some sustenance in us to at least provide fuel to propagate and procreate and do other things and keep the species moving. It took a long time. And then within, like, am I talking eons here, I guess, maybe? In far less than an eon, in just a fraction of an eon or an epoch or whatever, a huge block of century-long stuff, we just turned lights on everything, and that's just one little thing. Electricity, harnessing it for what we had alleged to be good, turns out maybe it is for a lot of things, man. Anyways, in other ways, it's maybe not so good. Now, why did I bring all this up? Oh, evolutionarily speaking, maybe. No, I can't get into that now. I'm burned out, dude. 47 minutes of this. You checked out a long time ago. Maybe. If not, you know what I do for YouTube is like I'll read the title of something and just figure that's clickbait. Look at it. Open it up, start watching the video. And then just skip ahead to the middle and then skip to the end and see if any of those 3 items, that small sample of the over large thing or the whole thing, the entire sample size, pick little pieces and go, hey, that's still good or whatever. And then maybe I'll sit and try and watch through the whole thing. So I would recommend a lot of different things for you. I did find out watching my videos at like 1.5 speed, 2 times 2 even, is doable. There's a whole lot of videos that I do that for, like trying to learn. If you want to attach a word to it, hyper learning, I just let that come blasting at me because it's going into the subconscious. It's going to be used, I believe. Anyhow, man, you know what? I do like